thank you guys for all joining today for the fourth episode in our series on Worldview Studies. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Peter Limburger, who is going to be giving a presentation on Solarpunk and Archeofuturism. Before I hand over the stage to Peter, just a couple of ground rules. Please put your questions in the chat if anything comes up for you as Peter is speaking. And towards the end of the hour, we will transition over for 10 to 15 minutes of question before we get into our second hour of our collective presencing session, which will be more discussion group based. So I will hand it over to Peter right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Rena. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the STOA. I'm so excited to present today. And it's a tough acts to follow because we had some amazing presentations. Rena kickstarting us off, and I'll be summarizing some of the stuff we've been talking about. But I'm gonna be presenting for maybe 40, 45 minutes, and we'll have a Q&A. So we'll get into it. All right, can you see it? The event. Oh, not only you can see it, but you can feel it. You know, the event is coming. Um, and I have this perverse enjoyment of sensing and analyzing all the worldviews at play. And it seems like uh, many have this notion of the event is about to occur. And what is the event? The event, something so big happens that the world forever changes. It will never be the same. And, you know, some people think World War III is on the horizon or already happening. Uh, there's a 5D shift, which means like this shift of consciousness, this transformation, collective enlightenment, if you will. Others in the UFOlogy sphere think a disclosure will be happening soon. We'll have an in-depth knowledge of what the government's hiding on UFOs. People with Christians and Christian people with Christian proclivities think the second coming will be happening. The God-man returns. The Great Reset. The technocrats get total control, full spectrum dominance. Climate apocalypse or technological singularity, which means that technology increases exponentially to a point where it doesn't need human input in order to advance. And I'm going to highlight this one, the technological singularity, and we'll get back to it in a moment. But I'm going to share my favorite event framing. It's our very own Rena's, the 500-year vibe shift. And I'm going to summarize our presentation for a bit, but the way I understood it is that this vibe shift is happening that we're all feeling, and it's really hard to sense make. Instead, we're sense breaking. There's a lot of seeming chaos, and we're sense breaking a lot of the truths or proposed truths of modernity or scientism. And then the internet brought what Rena calls a network of perspectives and this like emerging meta perspectival capacity. And AI, the latest technology, is perhaps bringing a metaphysical reevaluation. Um, and so, with this 500-year vibe shift that kicked off Worldview Studies, we had two sessions that were kind of like cartographers of the present worldviews in play that are sensing and responding or reacting to this 500-year vibe shift. First, we had Gary, and he presented the following tripartite: the transhumanists, the ethno-pagans, and the universal sacred, which includes Christians, which he is one. And then that was followed by Simon, who said the three worldviews sort of in conflict at play are the Bayesians, the postmodern New Left, and then civilizational traditionalists. And I would say they're kind of talking about the same thing, but they have different framings. So you can make the argument that the Bayesians and the postmodern New Left, what some call woke, together make transhumanists or will make the transhumanists. And the postmodernists, transgender is critical to that understanding. And it has a radical epistemology where you can untether gender and biology. And some argue that that's needed. A transgender movement is needed for a transhumanist movement to come about. Um, and then the civilizational traditionalists, you can say, are a combination of the ethno-pagans and then the universal sacred. That's one kind of framing that Simon lumps those two together. Uh, so with that, we have really the transhumanists versus the civilizational traditionalists, or the techno-optimists versus the techno-pessimists, which you can say, if we switch from worldviews to timelines, what the worldviews predict or what they foresee, one is post-human, a post-human world, or one is the stay human. And fundamentally, both of them, the through line with this is like a relationship with technology. And Gary, his position is to be this is my phrase, so I hope you enjoy it, Gary, but being a meta-Christian, and he was influenced by Jordan Hall, and then Simon, a meta-rationalist, influenced by Dave Chapman for meaningless, and some people refer to this as a more popular term, meta-modern. Uh, and I would say that kind of like niche inside baseball with these wisdom spaces is that this is kind of the wisdom war. It's a little dramatic framing, but the meta Christians, meta moderns, they're going to have tension within this wider tension of the techno optimist and the techno pessimist. But we're not going to talk about this right now. That might be a different inverse course. Um, but we're going to highlight this, a relationship with technology. And then we're going to zoom back and then just look at the course. So that was a summary. I hope I was accurate enough representation of where we got to the last three sessions. And now let's like look at this series as a whole briefly, why I was called to create it. So what is a worldview? One of the articles in the syllabus defined it as a worldview provides a comprehensive framework that serves to fit all truths together in a relationship. Quite like it, concise. And my personal benefits of that I received by engaging in worldview studies for the last 10 years, it helps you navigate the culture war better. You don't get polarized, you don't really get captured, you don't get canceled. You can make moves that avoids all that. And you make more friends, more interesting friends. I got friends from the right, the left, from the meta. It's just like it's all over the place, and it's quite enjoyable to talk to people with different worldviews that I find challenging, that trigger me. But you can be with them in a way that is authentic and respects their worldview and the contours of it. And thirdly, being meta-reflective of your own worldview creates this meta-perspectival capacity where you can honor other people's worldviews. And if the wisdom scholars are correct, they say meta-perspectival capacity is important for wisdom cultivation, or more humbly said, at least makes you less foolish. So I think these are benefits of legit benefits of engaging in worldview studies. And then and so this is like Simon's like a cartography that he presented in this article. And then when I came across Simon's article, I just had this like intuition to do this course. I'm like, okay, I just really loved it. And it reminded me of what I did in 2018 when I did this, my own cartography of what I call the mimetic tribes. But there are all these worldviews at the time from uh, you know, uh, social justice activists is what's called. People call them now woke or gender critical feminists, or TERFs, dirtbag left, post rationalists, intellectual dark web, and we broke it down. Connor Barnes and I, in this paper, we had a telos means the purpose or directionality, the sacred values, the values that you just can't transgress, or they'll get triggered and then they go on attack mode. And their master status is a term meaning how they identify at their core, and then the existential threats. And there's more aspects that we added here. And again, this is I wouldn't say this is an objective assessment necessarily. It's more of a creative um, anatomy that we did for these worldviews. And really, it is kind of like dissecting worldviews. You know how we dissected frogs in biology classes, like instead of the heart, that may be the telos, and the liver is the whatever the existential threat. Um, and this is useful, this is helpful, but it misses a lot. It misses the emotional reality of embodying these worldviews. It misses the context, and then how it evolved. So it's helpful, but it's not everything. It doesn't really tell you how to create or engender or midwife a new worldview having this capacity. So in this proposed discipline of worldview studies, there's perhaps two aspects: dissecting a worldview, as I just mentioned, which has those benefits that we talked about, and perhaps predicting a worldview. If you recall Simon's presentation, he left us off with like, "What's next? What's next?" We got the download from Rena. We're in this vibe shift. We got these different worldviews that are at play, but like, what's next? Let's see. Okay, predicting. So yeah, I want to return back to what we highlighted, this technological singularity. Um, there's debate if there's actually going to be a singularity, but I think it's, unless a collapse happens, it's undeniable that we're going to have massive technological innovation and change that's just going to change how we see and relate to the world. Uh, and Arthur C. Clarke said any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I like the term techno-magic. So I think we're entering this techno-magical age. Um, and this is what's on the horizon. AI generated media is already here: augmented reality, holographic displays, neural interfaces, quantum computing, engineered living materials, advanced robotics, sex bots. Don't do it. I think I've been writing a lot about sex bots, but all these things are just going to change how we relate and how we see the world. And it's to a point where we can't really predict beyond, this event, this kind of technological, whether it's a singularity or just a kind of rapid advancement. And I love this sort of graphic, this framework called, I think it's pragmatic imagination. And, our sense-making capacities require perception, reasoning, deductive, inductive, abductive. But after a certain point, we need to consciously sense break. And this is where speculation happens, so if we're going to ask the question, what's next? With all these events in the midst of this 500-year vibe shift, we can't rely on our sense making anymore. We got to engage in some sense breaking and have a more creative, intuitive, perhaps spiritual understanding of what's going to occur. So all that's saying is buckle up, because the next half of this presentation is going to get quite speculative. And so part two of these aspects is, one is predicting a worldview, but you can also say prophesizing a worldview. It's a different metaphysics. Maybe a prediction, a prophecy point at the same thing, but a prophecy, as I understand it, is something divinely channels through you, either through God or gods or some kind of entities, that gives you an understanding of what's going to come. Uh, Another way to say it is manifesting a worldview, which is a different, again, philosophy behind it, but it's sort of like more like you're going to create what is ahead. And to manifest a worldview, sometimes you write a manifesto. So we're going to look at two manifestos related to technology. One, the Unabomber, Uncle Ted, and the other, Mark Andreessen's 2023 manifesto, the Techno Optimist Manifesto. And we can kind of put Uncle Ted's manifesto as the techno pessimist, because he's pretty much a techno pessimist. So these are two manifestos trying to manifest the future in the face of rapid technological change, which they both address. So let's review Uncle Ted's manifesto. So it was written in 1995, the year the internet was privatized. Interesting. Um, and he outlined two future scenarios driven by technological advancement. Scenario one, he called the machines, maybe you can call it advanced general intelligence or advanced superintelligence now, but they were fully replace human capacities, leading humanity to surrender agency and could become completely dependent on technology. Scenario two, humans remain in control, but the power is concentrated into a ruling elite that no longer needs the masses. So either they get rid of them or they subdue them and make them NPCs. Uh, so he didn't mention NPCs, but he basically kind of predicted it in his paper or his manifesto. And so to prevent these outcomes, he says we have to return to nature and destroy what he calls an industrial technological society. Um, and and so we call this the collapse timeline because if you read any collapse theory, a decomplexification event needs to occur in order for collapse to happen. And so if you scale back technology, especially in the rapid way, that will happen. So Uncle Ted wants collapse. The techno optimist, Mark Andreessen. So in 2023, you know, amidst the concerns and the doomerism around the artificial general intelligence, he released this manifesto celebrating technology and advocating directly for human dominance over nature. He explicitly says that in the manifesto. And he champions the industrial technological society, or what he called the techno capital machine in the manifesto, as the ultimate problem solver. And yeah, technology moves towards like integration with the body, immersive virtuality. Um, and we claim that this like, or I'll claim that the disembodiment and the dehumanized states that this brings is going to engender a gray alien timeline. So what is this gray alien timeline? And this is, by the way, this is a manifesto, like a meta manifesto that I wrote with Daylight Computers talking about this dialectic. So the gray alien timeline, and I hope your seats are buckled at this point. So gray aliens that you see in sort of like media lore, X-Files, are not from the future, but are humans that have evolved under extreme technological conditions. And this is the argument of Michael Masters, who's a biological anthropologist. He's legit. Uh, and and he argues that uh, given that technology is going to be embedded in us, we're going to get screens are going to get closer to us, that eventually we're going to evolve to have larger brains, bigger eyes, smaller childlike bodies because we don't need to use them anymore. And this is also going to result in a fertility crisis that compels these future humans to time travel in the past. That's why a lot of these kind of gray alien encounters have like a rape or sex kind of scenarios in order to recover viable genetic material from the past. Um, so yeah, this is the evolutionary arc, and I'll leave this one up here just for a couple of moments. Uh, so regardless if you think this is true or legitimate or whatever, it just we can call this like we can call the collapse timeline the Mad Max timeline. We can call the Gray Alien timeline the Matrix timeline because it kind of gestures at the same thing, this dystopian relationship with technology that has a inhuman timeline. And this I put this on the syllabus as well. This is the accelerationist compass, the famous accelerationist compass on Reddit, and it's like all these other hellish timelines in relationship to technology. And then somebody kind of had like a summary of them, all of them. Uh, but we don't want this. We don't want the timeline, the gray alien timeline. We don't want the collapse timeline. We want something else. I can sense that people at the Stoa are longing for a third timeline, perhaps. So in this interesting relationship between worldviews and timelines, I think there's something to maybe perhaps we have a timeline studies course next. But like a techno pessimist worldview, let's say if it leads to the collapse timeline, techno optimist worldview leads to the gray alien timeline. What about techno realism? How do we complete this dialectic? And I understand a techno realist as it understands something terrible could happen, understands something great could happen, but has a wise relationship with technology. Um, and there's actually two imaginaries, as you can call it, that have a techno realist gesture. And one is Solarpunk, the other is Archeofuturism. Um, and I'll kind of do an overview of both. And they're very visual. So I'm going to show a video in the moment, but there's a lot. If you go uh, type in Solarpunk on Google, you're going to have all these kind of like, you know, cool graphics, futuristic, naturist graphic, and same thing with Archeofuturism, a little darker in vibe, but Solarpunk. So it's like harmony in nature and technology. Imagine a future where clean energy, smart design, nature work together in balance. It's community and care, focus on inclusive, cooperative communities. Has a bright, regenerative aesthetics. Um, where Archaeofuturism is more of a fusion of tradition and futurism, combines advanced technology, ancient traditions, and spiritual values rooted in ancestry and meaning. Connection to heritage, homeland, the sacred as guides. Um, yeah, and envisions a grand tech, high-tech civilization inspired by classical beauty and ancient strength. And if we can kind of compare these two together, they're both sensing into this, whether it's a technological singularity or rapid technological change, and it's trying to harness it. It's trying to make it in relationship with either nature. So there's sort of like a technological fittedness with nature or with the sacred. That's the core of each of those. Um, and you can say that one is the movement of it is regeneration, and the other one is return. The people quote unquote woke and based. So the people on the left of the culture war essentially are going to be probably more attracted to a solar punk future. People on the right side of the culture were more attracted to archaeofuturism. There's a conviviality with solar punk, and there's a hierarchy with archaeofuturism. And you might be an odd meta person, and you might be attracted to both in their own ways, and you're kind of like, how do I hold these two together? Um, so yeah, that's the question. There's like almost like a dialectic within a dialectic. Is it a solar punk, archaeofuturism? Um, and returning to this slide, I think what will help complete the dialectic, again, is what's happening in these niche wisdom spaces, the wisdom wars. And it's not just between meta Christians or meta moderns, you can say meta animists, meta Buddhists. I think anyone who has the capacity, who has a grounded capacity to take different perspectives and honor the values, could help move things forward in this dialectic. So, that being said, all that speculation. You don't have to believe in any of that. But that's one sort of sketch, you could say, of having a future that is good, true, and beautiful. I think that's all I have. So I'll pause there and take Rena in.
Thanks so much, Peter. That was very interesting and very illuminating, and it's it's really fun to think about all these future possibilities of civilizational design according to various different moral lines and different values. I like this dialectic between solar punk and archaeofuturism because I think it maps well to something that we understand today, kind of, which is our current political divide of left versus right. And it brings to mind Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory, where he basically says that political leaning is kind of innate according to a set of values. And while people on the left might gravitate towards values more akin to care and fairness, those who lean more towards the right include those in their value set, but also include things like loyalty, in-group loyalty, for example, and tradition. And it's interesting because it seems that these value sets are kind of innate. And I'm curious what you think about the discussion of civilizational design kind of brings about this question of um kind of like cohesion. So do you get everyone in a civilization to cohere around a certain set of values and kind of enforce those as dominant values within a civilization? Or does civilization as a whole become more plural to accommodate for different people with maybe different value sets living in ways that feel more natural or comfortable or aligned to them? So I guess my question is, do you see what's kind of like a minimum viable civilization for you? Does it involve everyone cohering around a certain set of foundational values, or can it take the shape of something more plural and more fragmented and more decentralized, where maybe both solarpunk and archaeofuturist enclaves can maybe exist within a broader, more multipolar civilization? Like, what is kind of the minimal unit of civilization?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's totally above my pay grade to
Well,
answer, but I'll share what is coming up. So, one aspect of the, Jonathan Haidt's thing about people on the left have certain values, people on the right have certain values. And I've seen the argument before that, fundamentally on the left, there's like a archetypal feminine energy where there's like a care, inclusiveness, and then there's an archetypal masculine thing on the right. And the idea is that, masculine, feminine wants to be in right relationship with each other, but they can be polarized. And so I think it's okay for people, and you can, disagree with that framing. I'm not too attached with it, but then it's more used as an example that people can have different values and different focus in life, and they need to have that, but they also need to be in relationship with people who have different values. And then once you kind of like reify those values and get captured by them, then it gets toxic, whether it's toxic masculinity or toxic femininity or whatever you want to call it. Um, and so I like one project I just want to get right in my own life with my own partner, with my own friends, and then and scale up there in an embodied way. And then what's going to come down? Like, I don't know. I don't like, I'm not predicting with this presentation, by the way, that is we're going to have like, this archeo future and then Solarpunk and they're at war with each other or whatever. It's more of a gesture to allow people to imagine in a certain way. And I think it could turn out to be this multipolar war, like world. Um, if it has to like become this like unipolar top-down control world versus a multipolar one, then my preference is definitely a multipolar one with a, plural verse of different perspectives and values. But I'm not sure how it's going to play out.
great. Thank you. Kind of related to this, I have a question from Kevin on solarpunk and archaeofuturism relating to mommy issues versus daddy issues. So Kevin, if you want to ask your question.
Hi, Peter. Great presentation. If you're a real Peterhead like I am, we know one of your favorite dichotomies is the mommy issues versus daddy issues, and it seems like in this case, like solar punk, nature kind of represents the Earth Mother and the feminine, as you just said, and the sacred of the Archaeo future kind of represents the Sky Father. And I'm wondering if you could riff on, you kind of related to this with, you want to people to take care of their own lives, right? Like your friends and your family. And maybe a synthesis is in Freudo-futurism.
Nice. Yeah, so you want me to just like riff off the mommy issue, daddy issue thing?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of already touched on that with
Yeah,
your masculine and feminine, but
yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm not sure if there's a question there, but
I'll just say that I think Kevin's referring to a piece I wrote where I mentioned this archetypal feminine, masculine, and there's like archetypal mommy issues on the left and the right, and then they get triggered. And then, yeah, I can share that article. But I do think if someone has it's like some kind of unexamined mommy issues or daddy issues, in the general sense, it's going to like bleed out into the worldview and politics.
All right, I have a question from Clifford. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, and I was starting to type in like kind of a different version of it, but it seems to me, yeah, the current system we live in, the kind of global capitalist system, is pushing us basically towards turning humans into batteries of some sort, kind of like the Matrix idea. We're all like plugged into our phones, we're all feeding these capitalist machines that really treat us based on our ability to provide financial juice to the system. What do you think are the like pivotal world events or things that would need to be in place to push us towards one of these, potentially better futures? And what factors do you think would affect like going one way or the other? Or do you think all of these things are going to come into existence in some form or another?
All the things, what things,
Like solar punk and like maybe some parts of the world will be like a solar punk reality and in other parts will be this uh you know yeah.
yeah. And I think that's sort of like a fear that a lot of people have is that the path of least resistance will be the gray alien timeline, the Matrix timeline, because it's just like we're losing our agency day by day to these things. And so how can we even like uh, begin to move towards one of these timelines, like the techno-realist timelines, if we're just still trapped in this thing? And so what kind of event or happening could occur? Um, Again, I don't know. There's just like Dune's coming up. There was an event in Dune, part of the Dune lore, where they just sort of like, you know, forbid technology. So there's no like kind of like there's technology, but not kind of like screen computing technology in Dune. And so everyone like engaged in what John Vervaeke calls psychotechnology. And so they started becoming advanced humans. They have psychic capacities, uh, and I kind of like that timeline, or that aspect, at least the Doom timeline, is having kind of like leaning on psychotechnologies. Um, and so at least the things that we can do today is just, resist against this and use the internet and our addictive technologies as sort of like temperance training to strengthen our will and capacity. Because every single spiritual tradition worth its salt, that's all about like, temperance maxing. It's all about kind of, denying something in this ascetic journey. And you can do that. You can treat the world as your monastery, but there has to be some kind of a will or desire toward that.
One thing that springs to mind for me, and it's not really a question, but let me see if I can formulate it as such. But one timeline that has been envisioned around this relationship with this teleological force of technology is something that Nick Land talks about. And for those who are unfamiliar, he is the originator of this philosophy of accelerationism, which Mark Andreessen kind of takes a diluted version of in his Techno-Optimist manifesto. And in Nick Land's imagination of it, the force of techno-capital is essentially like a parasite on the human social field. The way he imagines it is as a literal alien or some kind of foreign force that is assembling itself out of the materials of humanity. So it's this kind of parasite that is bigger than humanity. It's operating on this collective level, and it is assembling itself out of the materials of humanity. And he says, he has this quote it says, "Nothing human makes it out of the near future." Um, and the way he envisions it is this trajectory of acceleration, techno capital wins out, human society is decimated or becomes peripheral, but it kind of leads to the same scenario that the Unabomber manifesto describes, just in a different way, where one results in collapse but self-directed collapse, and one results in a collapse but at the mercy of a force that's much greater. So I don't know, it's this tricky bind almost when it comes to our relationship with technology. It is there's a bunch of viewpoints that kind of make it seem like there's no way of the human winning out, and I think to me that points to something about the current consciousness level of humanity and how we still view the human as this very individualized entity. And maybe what this necessitates is a shift in collective consciousness to be able to perceive these parasites and forces that are operating on a more collective systemic level. And then it becomes a beast that we can tame in the same way that we have tamed animals to do labor for us. Maybe we harness the power of techno capital in order to do our labor for us, but it requires this awareness of this force that is happening on a collective scale. I guess that's not really a question, but I'm curious, Peter, like what you think about that and any sort of like consciousness level shift that might necessitate going into this new future.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But putting a lot of thought into this. One framing I use is like the we space versus cult state. And there's this an integral theory they call it the we space. There's a book cohering the integral we space, and it's a lot of these intersubjective meditative practices, as they call it, like collective presencing or circling. Um, if you do it long enough with the same group of people, there's like almost a sense of oneness that emerges where you don't collapse into groupthink, so you don't get enmeshed with each other. You maintain your individual sovereignty, but it's almost like a new intelligence gets born from it. And I've talked to like advanced we space practitioners, and they basically claim they have like psychic capacities with one another. Um, it's kind of like that Sense Eight. Is that the Sense Eight show, or with the Matrix people? It's sort of like that. Capacity gets emerged or emerges, and so that's kind of related to the 5D shift, but it's like a collective, like a beyond the atomized I into more of a sovereign we. So that's one sort of timeline, which I think the wisdom wars are going to be working out. And then if we just do the path of least resistance, that's like the cult state timeline where there's just like, top-down control, everyone's an NPC. Um, and we outsource our thinking and agency to something else.
All right, I have a question from Yoshio. I hope I'm saying that correctly. On the parallels between the coming AGI singularity and maybe more traditional religious imaginaries.
I'm
I
not sure if you can hear me.
can hear you.
If, oh, sweet. Well, I'll just read it. Is there any alignment between the image of the heavenly Jerusalem and the coming AGI singularity? Do they share a telos? Are they both a kind of dissolution towards a higher intelligence?
The maybe I won't address that exactly, but one timeline, uh, the Mad God timeline, is an argument that there's believing in God is a human requirement, and there's a God-shaped hole in society, and that AI is developed by rationalists, techno-optimists, and so AI is kind of going to go insane soon, and then there's going to be this dynamic where humans um, worship it as a god, and there's going to be multiple of these mad gods emerging. So there's going to be like a mad god competition that's happening, um, and then there's a way to resolve that. But I'm sharing that because I think there's going to be a lot of, and it's already happening with AI psychosis and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of religiosity associated with these things, and they're going to have a lot of parallels with, you know, Christianity and different traditions.
All right, more questions. I have one from Clifford on how would on a basically UFO disclosure, if you want to ask it and maybe add some detail.
Uh, sure. Yeah, I was just curious on if you have any thoughts on how like a true disclosure event or what it feels like is happening right now is like some kind of soft disclosure where it's like generally creeping into these different domains more and more respected scientists, politicians, government officials, and intelligence and high-ranking military people are coming out saying this is a real thing. Um, yeah, how do you think that could affect the course of things, or do any of these philosophies feel more open to that kind of paradigm shift?
Like, I try to stay away from UFOlogy stuff because it's a really weird space. And every time I look into it too much, it's like kind of strange things start happening. And I know people like then they deep dive into it and they start having UFO encounters and alien encounters. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not doing it. So I'm curious, Cliff, if there's any kind of like disclosure stuff that you've been reading that you could share with us. I have some other stuff to share, but I'm curious if there's any like thought of like what will be disclosed.
You know, it is such a crazy. I like to approach things rationally, usually, and consider myself a skeptic. And it's just long been interesting to me that there are very credible, high-ranking military officials and people like Paul Hellyer, who was the Canadian Minister of Defense,
Right, right.
and you have multiple astronauts, and now the list just keeps growing and growing. There's this guy, Colonel Philip Corso, in the 90s, who said he was head of the Foreign Technology Division, the DoD's Foreign Technology Division, and he came out right before he died saying that Roswell was real. He was in charge of the crash materials and seeding it to industry, and that a bunch of technological innovations came from reverse engineered UFO crash materials. And now more and more people coming out. Just recently, um, people involved in the Varginha, uh, which is kind of the Brazilian Roswell. You have like the head of surgery at the hospital who got to see one of the aliens for a few minutes coming out just recently. It's like everything is kind of skewed in the direction of people coming out as they're old, saying, actually, it's all real. I lied earlier because people told me I had to lie. So there's
Yeah.
something going on there. What is it? It feels like something at the edge of our perception, at the edge of our understanding. It's constantly shifting with our current views on science fiction and technology. But
Mhm.
why is it the biggest psyop that's ever been done on the public? That for sure is happening. And it's just so crazy. Like, why would it be that important to keep this secret if this is true, as more and more dozens of high-ranking military people are coming out saying that this is real? So yeah, and it's trickling out more and more. Um, there's still a lot of difficulty in getting whistleblower protection. So that's the main issue, is lots of people want to come forward, but they face serious reprisals. They have their security clearances revoked. They have their credibility destroyed. Wikipedia seems to be compromised, where their Wikipedias will be changed in real time as they share things that they're not supposed to share.
Well, this is yeah, like and then like I want to pivot topics. I don't want to talk about UFOs too much, but like like Michael Masters, he thinks aliens are like us from the future, right? Evolved versions of us, time traveling. There's rumored that there was a Collins elite in the military, a bunch of Christians who thought UFOs were demons, essentially. So there's that kind of argument that these aliens are actually kind of demonic or spiritual entities. And then the Canadian guy, the diplomat that you mentioned, and then there's an Israeli guy. They talk about the Galactic Federation, I believe, like a federation of different aliens, and then the Nordics or the tall whites, like these giant. They're like, I know too much about this stuff, but it's yeah. But if something like that is like gets revealed as true, like what the like and how can we even know with all the be able the capacity to manipulate us with AI to even know these things will be true unless we see it with our own eyes. But then there's holograms, so it's going to be a really trippy time. And that's another kind of thing too, like how this can be used as a control mechanism. Um, false UFO invasions or whatever. But yeah, let's pivot.
All right. I have a question pivoting from this, from Shingai, on lunar punk.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So as you were looking at the picture of Solarpunk and then Archeofuturism, I was curious if you have any thoughts on Lunarpunk and how that might fit into the story. Do you see it as maybe like a complement to Solarpunk? Is it opposing Solarpunk? Any general thoughts on Lunarpunk and its relevance?
Could you explain? I'm not too familiar with lunar punk.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna paste a definition in here and then read it quickly. So, lunarpunk is an emerging subgenre of science fiction and a derivative of solarpunk that envisions a sustainable and optimistic future, but with a focus on the nocturnal, spiritual, and individualistic aspects of society. It shares the core ecological and hopeful goals of its sibling aesthetic, and serves as its complementary opposite. So I actually haven't gone deep into it. I just have heard like crypto people mentioning it over the past years, especially people interested in like privacy and ZK proofs. And so it just popped into my mind and thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, thanks for doing so. I'm just looking
Yeah,
at it. It looks like there's
yeah,
like a cult elements to it. It's like a dark solar punk or something.
yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I have no thoughts other than appreciating the share.
yeah.
Um, that's really cool. I will definitely look into that more. Um, I have another question here from let's see, where does this go? It was Wealth. And if you could unmute and ask your question.
Sure. Thanks, Rina. Hi, Peter. Thanks for this excellent presentation. My question was, how does the project of the third timeline and all of the possibilities of it connect to the theme of wise agency?
Mhm. Thank you for asking that question, because I can plug the next inverse course that's coming up November 19th on wise agency. Um, yeah, so this wise, like how everyone like talks about high agency. Oh yeah, like high agency, that's the thing you need. And the way I understand high agency is like accomplishing, um, things under like complex constraints. But it's different from having wise agency, because you can be a highly agentic fool and create suffering with your agency. But wise agency is like accomplishing things, but the right things for the right reason and the right time with the right people, in the right way. And so it's like the kind of the combination of wisdom and agency. And you can get people who are into wisdom, into like high consciousness, but they're just kind of like not in the game, like spiritual bypassers. Um, and so something about this wise agency uh, is like an attractor to a lot of people. I'm finding. And then how can we just discover it together essentially, and how it relates to the third timeline. So there's this dialectic of techno pessimist, techno optimist, and the techno realists. And the techno optimists and then the techno pessimists, they have like a lot of certainty that a certain world or timeline will emerge, where a techno realist, like the kind of synthesis, can go meta and recognizes the potential, but they like can like live in uncertainty. So there's a greater capacity, and that the meta capacity people argue is like capacity for wisdom. Um, and so I think that capacity in seeing the future and sensing into what could be provides a certain agency and a more hopeful disposition. And just a case in point, like I work with the AI collective. I'm the philosopher in residence right now, and I'm doing like a road tour presentation, kind of like this, but I'm not talking about Unibombers or gray aliens. But I'm presenting the dialectic, but just calling it the AI pessimist, AI realist, AI or AI optimist, AI realists. And most people in the collective, they're kind of in the AI optimists. But when I present them this dialectic, everyone's like, I'm an AI realist. That's it. I don't want to be an optimist. I don't want to be a pessimist. I'm a realist. So just sort of, even though it might not be fully embodied, but just kind of giving them that North Star, I feel like it has some kind of alchemic aspects. Um, so I do think they're highly, highly related.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Peter, should we transition into our collective presencing section?
Yes. If there's no more questions, we can move. So yeah, I guess I'll take over. Thanks, Rena. Thanks, everyone. We'll go on about a 5-minute break, and then we'll do the collective presencing. I think we can stay in one big room again. So yeah, let's take take a break.